start the recording before I forget. Just starting off, opening statement. The amount of children that have been diagnosed with autism has steadily increased in the 2000s and compared to the 90s. Currently, 1 in every 54 children are identified as having ASD, which stands for autism spectrum disorder. This spectrum is very large, which means autism can look different in every child. Most children who are diagnosed with ASD begin school on an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. This plan focuses on developmental plans and goals to ensure students' measurement of success is based on their physical, mental, and verbal capabilities. These plans follow students from grade school to high school with tweaks along the way. The problem is these IEPs are not done at the college level, so now these students are already going into an academic setting where for the first time they won't have the plan. The Access, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee focuses on being a voice for individuals who don't represent the majority. Our goal today is to bring more awareness to students with autism and give you all the tools to be able to make a difference when you have any interactions with autistic students in your role. With that being said, we are extremely proud to have both Ann Shore and Tammy Strauss from Quinsigamond Community College, who serve as coordinators for the Student Accessibility Service Center today to provide communication strategies with autistic students.
All right, thanks a lot. I'm Ann Shore. I'm going to share my screen, and then hopefully that works. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Great. So thank you so much for having us. We're from Quinsigamond Community College with Tammy. I'll have her introduce herself soon too. Quinsigamond is in Worcester, and we have a large office of student accessibility services, and we work with students that have a wide range of challenges and disabilities, and autism is one of the growing disabilities of students that are entering college, and so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I know Tammy's as well. And we look forward to sharing our knowledge that we've gained over the years, that we've also learned from our students. They teach us a lot. So Tammy, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Tammy Strauss. I have spent just a little over 10 years at Quinsigamond in Worcester, Mass. And prior to that, I've actually spent about 35 years in the field of education. I started out with littles, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, and some things just aren't any different between 5, 6, 7-year-olds and college students, you know. So thank you for having us here today. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about some of the students that might be visiting you.
Let's start with our cover here. I don't know if you can see that. The cartoon reads, "Does anyone know where we keep the unwritten rules?" So that's the theme of today, basically. Autism is a communication disability. It is a process information very differently, and that affects the way that they perceive the world and communicate. And we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges of communication in general and how that can be extra hard for some individuals with autism. And there we go. Okay. So on today's agenda, what we hope to focus on today and some goals that we hope to achieve is to help you recognize what some of the characteristics are with someone with autism. It is a spectrum, so not everybody will have every single characteristic that we talk about, and the intensity or the range of the challenges regarding specific characteristics will also differ for different people. So basically, everybody is unique. Folks on the spectrum, it's considered a spectrum because of that wide variety. But we're just going to really talk about some general, characteristics that pretty prominent among most individuals with autism. And then once you get a better sense of some of the characteristics, we hope to talk about, best ways to respond, best ways to communicate, and to interact and to instruct, right? In your case, it's financial aid, right? So we'll talk about the specific challenges of the financial aid process, which I know are confusing for just about anyone, and how they can be especially stressful or unclear for someone with autism. Yes, and we have it's a growing population, 1 in 55, 1 in 54, whatever the statistic is, it is growing. I think a few years ago it was said to be 1 in 64, but it is right now the current statistic is 1 in 55 children 8 years old are diagnosed with autism. We have at least half of them, about half of them, will eventually go to college, and they comprise about, as of 2011, I think, it's now 2022, so this is probably more than 2% right now. So there's at least 2% of all college students that have autism, and 550,000 children will be with autism are transitioning into adulthood into the next decade. So it's I think it's a public health issue, right? So it's not just a college issue, K through 12 issue. It's everybody's. It's a societal issue, right? So it's good for us to understand all the differences that people have, and this group of people is bringing it forward. That they have a different way of processing information and interacting with the world, and so it's important, I think, that we as a society get to have a better understanding of their challenges. And so one of the reasons that the diagnosis seems to be growing, right? No one knows for sure exactly why, but some of the theories are that the diagnostic category, right, expanded, right? So maybe 30 years ago, the diagnostic category, okay, was a little bit narrower, right? And then it expanded, right? So it included a lot more individuals, right, who were not covered under that diagnosis before, right? So that's one of the reasons. And also awareness, when a condition is in the medical community, right? So when there's a condition or a diagnosis that the medical community becomes a lot more aware of, they tend to, right, offer more diagnoses of that condition. So that's some of the other reasons. So I do have a quick video. I thought we would start with a video, right, to hear from individuals on the spectrum to share their experience, because I think that's really the best way to really get a feel for it. And then we'll talk more about more details. So let me. So what I'm going to do, I was afraid that was going to happen. I'm still, I'm going to, let's see if that works. I think it's coming on. There we go. Let's skip ads. There we go.
And we're not seeing the video.
You're not seeing it? Okay.
No, it's still on your slideshow.
Okay. I think we'll get it. I have another way. Let's see if we can do it another way.
Yep,
And
there we go.
you see this?
Yep.
Thank you.
Autism is
It's a little low, and do you think, is it possible you can turn it up?
So it's low?
Yeah.
Okay. Try one more time. If not, unfortunately, maybe you'll be able to view it afterwards. Because I think my volume is all the way up.
Check the one at the bottom of the video screen.
That seems to be all the way up too. Do you hear anything on that?
We was hearing it. It was just very faint, but let's see. Try playing it again.
it's because can be a lot of different things. It's a spectrum.
There we
Not
go.
everyone.
Yeah, someone in the chat has suggested that if you just put the link in the chat, we can all watch it on our own.
Okay.
You know, just give us a couple minutes, then we'll all reconvene.
Yeah.
And it's a good suggestion. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, did you want to, what was the suggestion, Tammy?
Just copy the link and
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
just
I
copy
see.
the
Then put
link
it in
and
the
paste
chat.
it in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
All right, let me get that. Excellent idea. Am I back? All right. Am I back? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't we have a conversation? Let's open it up. Let's be informal. So what are everybody's thoughts? Anybody have any comment? So basically, you know, they're all different, just like, you know, we're all different. Folks on the spectrum have, you know, different strengths, different challenges. Most common one, right, is challenges with social skills, social communication. They interpret language in a very concrete, literal way. So abstract, indirect language is very, very confusing. It's like a foreign language. And anybody who has firsthand knowledge, right? Kids with autism, family members, you identify as autistic, please chime in, right? So I'm going to go over some characteristics, right? Many of the folks in the video discussed many of these challenges and strengths. A big one is transitioning, right? So anything that's new, anything that's not a routine can be very overwhelming, right? So adapting, right, to a new school, and the next day, right? Because every day is new, right? You know, as hard as we try to make things consistent, things come up, right? So every day is very stressful for individuals with autism. And many of them like to follow strict routines, and that keeps them calmer, helps them manage anxiety. You know, new rules, very overwhelming, right? So a class, right? Every class, each instructor has a different set of rules. Their Blackboard page, which is their learning management system, as Tammy knows, it's just confusing, and let alone for someone who really needs some consistency, right? Syllabus, right? Following a different format, very, very overwhelming. Meeting new people, right? Is tough, right? So that's something that they struggle with on a day-to-day basis. Sensory overload is a big one, right? So things that neurotypicals may block out, autistic individuals have difficulty doing, right? Because they're processing things. Their brain is processing things in a very different way. And so lights, right? They may be extra sensitive to different lights. So they might prefer to sit in the dark, or they might have shades of some sort, right? Little noises, we can learn how to filter it out that are overwhelming to them, right? Create a lot of anxiety. Smells, right? Their olfactory senses is very sensitive, so they can smell certain things, right? That can be a nuisance, can be disturbing, can gross them out. And touch, right? So these are stimuli, right? Or the floor, right? Feet on the floor. I mean, either they can feel certain things that maybe we don't. A neurotypical person may be used to blocking out. So all this is coming in at the same time, and then they're interacting with people. So it is just a very overwhelming experience for them. They may engage in certain repetitive behaviors, have some preoccupation with specific ideas and objects, and some of it is a calming technique for them, right? So if you see an individual flapping their hands, when they're younger, often they may do some head banging, right? Again, that's a stereotypical behavior that they may be doing to calm their body down. Now, they have many strengths, right? So their mind is wired to specialize, right? And to hyperfocus. So while they may be preoccupied with random objects and ideas and perseverate on these things, they can be very, very knowledgeable in these highly specified areas. And I have learned a lot, right, about certain things I knew nothing about from some of my students, about rockets and space, they can offer a lot in terms of their area of expertise, very detailed, right? So they may thrive like in certain types of industries where they can utilize their strengths. And again, I am being, I am generalizing, right? Because no one person, no individual on the spectrum is going to have all of these characteristics, right? But in general, I've found my students with autism to be very loyal and to be very honest, very sincere, right? And part of it is the way they communicate, right? Because human interaction and human communication is so complex, and a lot of it involves nonverbal cues, body language, eye contact, indirect references, right? That's not the way they communicate. And so that, their way of communicating does not lend itself, right, to any ambiguity or any dishonesty, right? Because they're going to be concrete, they're going to be straightforward, okay? Very good, because they're very good with routines, they're very good with follow through, right? And one other challenge, which I did mention we're going to go into later, is called the executive functioning skills. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of this terminology, but it involves a lot of cognitive skills that involve planning and timing, organization, skills that are very important for school, for life, for jobs. We're going to get into that a little bit later, because basically the gist, yeah.
Jaron has put something in the chat he'd like to share.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, just wanted to speak on the repetitive behaviors that having two members in the family who have autism. One of the things that my son does, he's fixated with lining things up in a size, place, order format. So like he'll take everything in the house that he can find that he can carry and just line them up in size, place, order, and just be stimulated by that. And like, he's just focused on doing that for the entire time. And if you were to stop him from doing it, he would get extremely emotional and sad. And he's been doing that for like 3 years now. And then I have a brother who his thing was spinning a string. So like, he'll take something, tie a string around it and just spin it all day. And like, that's the way that he, I guess that I think the phrase is stem. It's one
Yep.
like a stemming. And that's the way that he does. And then my other brother has this where he just can't, he just has to rock. Like, he just has to rock his body when communicating as his way of, you know, coping with everything.
Right. Very self-soothing. Right.
Also, Julie had mentioned in the chat that, you know, from the video, they just want to be loved and understood for who they are, that they're not hoping for a cure. And I think as financial aid, counselors, admissions, you know, these first points of entry, they're wanting that social connection. And this is y'all's opportunity to be that person, you know, and be a person who connects with them, that they feel comfortable with, that they feel, you know, a loyalty and honesty with, that they can come back to and ask you questions, and that they have someone at the college from the beginning, you know, who they can go to.
Right, because meeting new people is very hard for them.
Mhm.
Right.
And then
So,
Todd mentioned that cure is ableist language. They're not sick. There's no need for a cure.
absolutely. And as you can see, they have many strengths, right? So it's a processing difference, right? Yeah, great. Any other comments? Oh, Tammy, we lost your volume.
Sorry. I was just saying that if you want to speak out, we're very informal. You know, you're welcome to speak out your comments, or you can continue to put them in the chat, whatever's good for you, whatever works for you.
Right, yeah. We're gonna make this a conversation as best we can, right? Because I'm sure many of you have maybe family members, coworkers, you know, on the spectrum as well. So we'd love to hear from you.
Quick comment, and my name is Tanika. Well, I'm Tanika. So the thing is, I was not diagnosed as autistic. However, I have had some brain damage in my latter adulthood, where it's caused me communication issues and concerns. So I can really relate to those who were born with developmental delays when it comes to having to communicate or process more deeply when hearing new information or having more than one stimuli in front of you at a time. So I get where you are coming to a situation where the one person has said in the video how she cannot go to a concert or go to a movie because it's hard to listen to what's happening on the screen and what's around you as well. That can be very difficult for communication. But as time goes on, you learn how to develop ways to cope with it. But for those who can't do that, it's very difficult. So I'm happy to hear that we have to be able to be more patient with our incoming students, or the current ones we do have, about communication and plans for make sure they feel included in all activities and communication.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the word patient. It's so important, right? And I feel like, in my experience too, the more you understand, right? It doesn't matter what, any topic, the more we can understand, the better we can help. We can helps us become patient, right? So certain behavior may appear rude, right? And I know I've been on the other end, the receiving end of that, right? And so it's just important for me to remember they don't typically intend to be rude, right? And it's just a different communication style, right? And I think it's important, I have to say, you know, a rude behavior, it's not an excuse, right? But I think it's important for us to understand and then to help. This is how I work with my students, you know, when I feel offended, if I happen to feel offended, because I'm human, right? I know what's going on, but then I might gently just help my student recognize, well, this is how it made me feel. So this gets to theory of mind, right? So this is another slide that just kind of recaps some of the common challenges in a different way, right? So theory of mind is an ability for somebody to take the perspective of another person, right? understand intentions. And again, it's all unwritten, right? It's you know, it's not straightforward, right? So an autistic individual has some challenges with that, right? They may not realize that what they find really interesting and relevant is going to be interesting to the person they're talking to, right? And so they may hyper focus, right? If they're really excited about train schedules and rockets and anything else, it's great to see their enthusiasm, but they may not recognize that not everybody, you know, shares that same level of interest, right? And again, the theory of mind, the hidden curriculum, the social pragmatics, self-advocacy, they all involve communication, right? So that's a huge area that they find challenging. And I'm going to get more into that. And then these are some of the cognitive skills that we were talking about, the executive functioning, which is the planning. Central coherence refers to integrating things, right? So their processing is more of a detailed sequential processing, right? They take in a lot of things, focus on details. Putting it together can be difficult, right? Integrating and synthesizing, right? And that's why, you know, maybe understanding certain directions, not just a communication challenge, but the way they're processing information. So think about with financial aid, like as we're doing this, right? Think about what is complicated, right? In that process. What's the terminology that you guys use? Is it vague, right? Do the rules change all the time, right? Think about those things. It's going to be, because I know it's confusing just for anybody, but again, for somebody who processes in a different way, think about those extra challenges. And then, right, self-advocacy, then reaching out to financial aid counselor is really hard, right? So I just want to do a quick review on executive functioning. Is anybody aware of the executive functioning skill set? Is this a terminology people have heard of? Anybody want to chime in? No? Okay. Well, executive functioning is a cognitive skill, right? And it involves all of these skills, right? Synthesizing, like I said, integrating information, right? Organizing, so sequencing, initiating, planning, finishing tasks. Concept of time is a big one. Some people may take it for granted, right? That sense of like, oh, I have an hour to go, right? Some people just don't have that ability, right? Regulating emotions, right? Problem solving, prioritize, very hard skills, very hard skills. And again, you may recognize why these skills are so important in what you do, right? Just managing your daily life, right? And then your job, right? And then if you have a family, it's a lot, right? So again, for an individual with autism, these are huge challenges, right? And on top of their sensory challenges that are coming in all the time, they're trying to communicate, you know, with people like it's a foreign language for them. It's a lot going on. So in the moment when you're interacting with someone with autism, that's all going on in their head, and they're can be very nervous, right? And so again, recognizing this can help us be more patient, right? Anybody have any?
I'm just thinking of financial aid and all of the things that are involved in, you know, especially with the FAFSA or filing for financial aid, all of the things you have to organize and finish the tasks, you know, and all of the emails we're sending that say, hey, you still need to complete your loan counseling. Hey, you still need to submit this piece. You know, it's like, gee, I've sent them like 5 emails and they're not getting it. I'm not sending anymore. This is just how it is. It's like, they really need the follow-up, you know. They're not looking at that, or they're thinking, okay, yeah, and then it's gone, you know, they forget about it. And also frequently students with autism, frequently they also have attention deficit disorder. And so that comes into play when you're talking about organizing things and finishing tasks. And you all know better than we do about the pieces and the bits that have to be put together for the financial aid to be complete, you know, that package to be complete for when they submit. So.
Perceived stalking has become an issue, right? Again, for our students with autism, again, it's often unintentional, right? But again, they have some difficulty differentiating between who their friends are, right? And acquaintances. Again, an ability to understand certain unspoken intentions or viewpoints, again, that theory of mind, right? So they may not realize if their behavior is a little inappropriate. But again, it's something that we need to help them learn, right? None of this is just an excuse to get away with, because it's not going to help them as they grow up and, you know, they have a job in the community. So again, the whole point of this is maybe just to better understand some of their behaviors so that they can learn. They can learn to change. And they actually are very grateful, right, when someone helps them understand that what they're doing may not be appropriate, and is willing to work with them to change. Okay. Again, so if, you know, at you know, teenagers, young adults, you know, it's their time to start to develop, you know, romantic interests, right? And our folks on the spectrum also want to have relationships. And so it is very, very, very hard for them to know how to go about doing it in an appropriate way. So we just thought we would talk a little bit about that, because that has become quite an issue with us on our campus. And again, it's always best to hear the quotes and experiences from those with autism. So I had this slide here from the past. You can quickly read some of them. I like this one in particular. Talks about a student here. It says, "My parents told me not to talk to strangers. I believe the only people who were not strangers were people my parents introduced me to. For years, I thought my classmates were strangers I couldn't talk to." And again, these are quotes from people with autism who want to connect. They want to make friends. They just have a hard time knowing how to do it. And again, because it's very literal, very concrete, as you can see in this example. And I have an example from one of my students when I did an intake, right? We're talking about their areas of interest. What do they want to study? What kind of a job are they interested in? A student said to me, "I want to be a bookkeeper. But the student thought but then as the student was explaining to me his interest in being a bookkeeper, he was talking about libraries. He loved working, you know, with books in the library. So for bookkeeper, right? Makes sense, right? That's how they process language. So very, very, very literal, and it, you know, kind of makes sense to me, you know. But again, that's how they can, you know, misinterpret information, and when communicating with people, find it very awkward. Next slide. Yeah. So this is just a bit of a slide here to talk about social communication challenges in general. Help us understand how complicated, you know, communicating is in general. It's not just speaking, right? Most of communication involves nonverbal cues, right? So reading body language, facial expressions, understanding a person's intentions when you're having a conversation, like the give and the take, knowing when to speak up, when to let somebody talk, when to listen. That's all considered the pragmatics of language, right? And that's the area that is most difficult for autistic people, right? Because that's the stuff that it's unwritten. It's like, they like to learn from written directions, from clear directions, right? There's really no you know, manuscript, right, on how to on the unwritten laws of communication, right? So again, just I think it's very interesting, you know, that to think about, you know, what we take for granted when we're communicating, when we're interacting, right? So again, communication most of communication is the nonverbal components rather than the actual words that we say. Right.
As far as this goes, what I frequently hear from professors is one of two things. So when they have one of my students in their class, one of the things they'll come to me with is this student isn't paying attention. He doesn't want to be in my class. What makes you think that? He has his head down. He has his head down the entire time. You know, he comes in, sits down, listens for about 5 minutes, and then he puts his head down and he's sleeping in my class. No, he's overwhelmed by the amount of information you've given him, you know. Or on the other hand, they come by and say, you know, this student, he talks all the time. Like no one else can get a word in because he's constantly offering information, but often it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So, you know, it's one of two things, and we're trying to get them there in the middle with the pragmatics. And when I talk with those students, they frequently say, well, why didn't they just say that to me? Why didn't they just tell me that? You know, they're talking kind of in social language with a little bit too many words or a little too flowery, where it's like, you know, just be honest, just get me the point, get to the point. You know?
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that a little bit. So I have a friend who is a veterinarian, and she just opened up a hospital. So she had all new staff, and one of her employees, she was telling me about, has autism. And they asked the girls across the board, like, what would you like your schedule to be? And when this girl told them what the schedule was that she would like, I guess we all sometimes, when we're asked questions, there's other things going on, and we trim it down and we're like, oh, well, this is sort of the expectations, you know, of the world around us. And we taper our answer to that. But this girl basically said she wanted every weekend off. So Kelly was like, well, how can she even imagine that she could have every weekend off? And I said to her, how did you ask the question? Like, you have to, I think about the question that you're asking. And if you leave it too broad, you're going to get a very broad answer, and maybe not what you think the answer should be.
Yeah. Good point. Again, just another illustration about nonverbal communication challenges that autistic individuals experience, right? So social conventions, right? The fist bump that we see here. I don't think Bob has quite the hang of the fist bump, right? There he is, bumping the buddy there. Yeah, body, look at all, you know, the different body languages, the different stances that we do, right? Overwhelming for autistic individuals. Something that they can learn, but it will take deliberate instruction, right, for them. And they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it as they're interacting with somebody, right? Okay. A graphic here, right, of what is going on, okay, with this autistic individual, right? They're having a conversation, and this is happening internally, right? So eye contact. I must interpret the body language. What does this mean? I'm uncomfortable looking at this person, making eye contact, thinking about this, you know, as they're having a conversation, talking about what they're comfortable talking about, right? May not be related to what the friend is asking, right? But think about this, physical gestures, interpreting all of this at the same time that they're feeling all those sensory stimuli that I mentioned, the background noises, the smells, the noises, the lights, right? So this is happening if they're coming into your office, right? So that's probably, could make them distracted as well, right? Or where they may need to do some calming behaviors because this is happening, right? Any comments about this slide? I really like this slide because I really think it shows visually what's going on in a person while interacting. Okay, I like this slide in particular. It took me a long time to put this together. Like I said, I learned from my students. I really do. And what was this? So Inside Out. Remember, so these are, yeah. So I think these are characters from, right, from that movie called Inside Out. Anybody ever see that? Maybe 5-7 years ago? Yeah. Now I had asked one of my students, like, you know, why so many people with autism really love the cartoons. I'm missing them. What's it called? Someone help me out. You know, it's not, you know, these types of movies. And what he explained to me is that it really helps them understand emotion, right? Because when you have a cartoon, like a, you know, a graphic design, right? What that does artistically is it really just highlights one particular emotion, right? It's not as 3D, right? As you know, as you know, real life, right? So it just it delineates, you know, accentuates, emphasizes a specific emotion, and it really makes sense. So here's a character that's having fun, joy, right? And this is how many of them may learn different emotions, right? Or learn what it looks like, you know, what the body language of you know, a certain indicates, right? So and it's something they may study. This is how they may learn how to interpret emotions, right? Or how, you know, or how to convey emotions, right? Right, disgust. Oops.
And they're very
Sad.
exaggerated in those pictures.
That's the word I'm looking for,
Yeah.
right? Exaggerated, right? So it's fascinating to me. Yeah, sadness, disgust, joy, anger, fear, right? I don't think I ever did see the movie, but again, my students teach me. So here's something I'd like us to talk a little bit about, right? So the unwritten rules that we've been discussing, right, as they apply to class, may also apply to, you know, the financial aid process, right? So in class, right, the unwritten rules in class are knowing when, you know, that you must raise your hand to speak, right? When to raise your hand. Again, so we may have some students that blurt things out, right? And not realizing, well, that's not what you're supposed to do, right? So a gentle reminder, right, will help them learn. And they will, like I said, they will change their behavior with appropriate reminders and guidance. Not speaking when others speak, right? Again, different rules for different classes, you know, getting used to that, unwritten, right? So how many students have I had that, you know, they get used to one set of rules for a particular class, and they think that it applies to another one, and they have to learn that it doesn't. Working with others, collaborating with others, again, hard because that involves social communication, turning in assignments on time. That involves, you know, knowing that, well, you have to follow the rules. You can't just hand in the assignment when you're done, right? And that's also an executive functioning skill. And knowing that you have to come to class on time. These are all things that we grow up learning, right? And again, they're not really deliberately, right, communicated, right? So that's why they're called unwritten, right?
I think it transfers to you know, I'm assuming most of the people in here, right, Jaron, are financial aid counselors, financial aid, they're meeting with students in that vein. But appointments, for example, I had set an appointment with a student the other day. He agreed to that appointment. And it was made in the morning, and we were going to meet that afternoon. So I get in my Zoom room and he's not there and he's not there. And accidentally, I just left it open, you know, and like 45 minutes later, there he is, you know, like, oh, well, okay, we were supposed to meet at, oh, well, I thought it was, you know, just the afternoon was good for you. So, you know, just kind of explaining to them that you kind of have other people that you're meeting with, that other students' financial aid issues are just as important as theirs. And you know, there we go with turning in assignments, but turning in things on time. Again, once doing the FAFSA on time, I'm constantly telling students, put a reminder in your phone now for next year's FAFSA, have it done by this day. It's, unwritten rules, terminology, acronyms. How many times, and this isn't just financial aid, this is the entire college, how many times are we using acronyms? And even kids who are not autistic, they don't get it. What are they? And I know at one point our department had made up a handout of all of the acronyms that just our department had. And I mean, it was a 2-column sheet filled just for student accessibility services with acronyms. Here's what it means. And I thought, holy cow, if they have one of these for each department at the college,
Right.
never get this. So sometimes if you use an acronym, then sometimes it's good to paraphrase afterwards what you mean.
Right, spell it out. So do you guys, is there anyone that has any comment about, what the unwritten rules are, terminology, in your field? Can you think of anything that pops out that is confusing, has been confusing when working with students? Any procedures, do they change year to year? What do you find that can be particularly confusing and may even be extra hard for an autistic person, right, with their specific challenges? Something to think about.
I can offer something that I know is definitely something that isn't necessarily communicated at the top, like for a student to know coming in. And that's like if they start to perform poorly academically, meeting that satisfactory academic progress and losing financial aid and having to go through an appeal process. I imagine that would be very stressful for a student who isn't aware of that information in general, but then also having to now go through that process and be told, like, if you don't do this, you won't have a way to pay for your education.
That's exactly what I was just thinking of, Jerron, because we literally call them SAP appeals. And so a student reading that is going, what are they saying about me? Like, why are they calling me this? Because they're thinking SAP, and it's like, okay, no. And you have to explain that. They're not connecting.
Yeah. I know we might be running short on time. I don't know how long we have, but any other comments about this? You can apply to your world, your profession. That'll go on to the next slide. Okay. Of course, you always want to leave it with some strategies. So strategies that apply to class, to working with financial aid, any office, right, that they visit, clarity, clear instructions, consistency as best as you can provide, helping them prepare for any change, any new routine, providing the concrete examples, right, because the abstract is what's going to be very challenging for them. Utilizing different ways of communicating, allowing them to convey their information in different ways, right? Some of them may be intimidated to see someone in person. They prefer email. Many of them don't like again, I don't like to generalize, but the phone, I don't think this generation likes the phone to begin with. And always providing specific feedback. And this one, allowing extra time, right, for verbal responses. Very, very helpful for them. Take a little time for them to process, right? Because remember what's going on with them, right? All that extra stimuli that's going on, and the internal conversations that they're having, right? And the anxiety. Think of yourself in a foreign country, right? And how anxiety provoking that can be. You don't fully understand everything. That's what their day-to-day life is like. Many strengths, as I mentioned, right? Capitalize on the strengths. Again, good with routines, very honest, right? Punctual. I know we talked a little bit about time management issues, but once they get it, that they're going to follow that rule. They'll be punctual, usually quite enthusiastic about their interests, right? Very detailed, expertise in particular areas, right? And typically a very logical, way of doing things. All right. And this is just, different profiles, right? Visual thinker. They're often more visual and pattern thinkers. So they may have some particular strengths in these areas, right? Academic areas like geometry, art, graphic design. Yeah. Visual aids, always very important. Right. So again, if you're interacting with a student and they're having a hard time, maybe, writing things down can help, or any particular imagery can help. And I think we're at the end now. So basically, we're really happy to have the opportunity to meet with you all and discuss our love for autism and share our insights that, again, many that we have learned through our students and through doing research and presenting and talking with people like yourself. But think about, how you can, adapt, right? Because that's what it's about, right? We want to also adapt to better serve and support, communicate with all students and students who process information differently. I think, as I said, just having a better understanding of what they're going through can help us be more patient, right? And find better ways of helping them, communicating with them. And the larger question is, thinking about, this has become a societal issue, right? We have 1 in 55 8-year-olds now being diagnosed with this, and eventually they'll be entering college and the workforce. So it's a societal issue, and I think what we're doing right now through these presentations, right, is learning how to better adapt, right? Society is going to have to learn how to adapt to people with autism, which is a good thing, right? Because they have so much to offer. And so basically, if you'd like to think about any changes that you can make to better connect with autistic student in your dealings with them, it's a good exercise, to do, and making, change is difficult for everybody. So I think these workshops just help us all reinforce that, right? That not only does an autistic individual, have to adapt, but I think we have to as well. That's my 2 cents on it from my years here working at Quinsigamond.
Christine mentioned in the chat that she hoped this could be a session at their conference, and I told her we'd be more than happy to start that conversation at their conference with them. I think it's exciting that you all invited us here today, because oftentimes now with the equity, I don't know what I want to say here, but the equity movement, I guess, the equity things that are coming to surface on campuses and the initiatives, oftentimes disability is left out of that, and yet it's a huge piece. So
yeah, very much so. So again, I don't want to keep you. I'm not sure what your time frame is, but we love to hear your thoughts, your comments, anything. Feel free to speak up.
I think that this has been a very enlightening conversation. I know personally my nephew, who's 2, just got diagnosed with autism. And I think, as a family, we're still learning about autism and what that is and all that stuff. So it's definitely a learning moment for us, I would say. And my question is, I guess, do students that have autism, do they disclose that to, I'm just trying to think, like, when would a student disclose that, and does it come up like naturally, or is the financial aid person or admission person, are they like asking the question, or how does it even come up that the student is autistic, I wonder?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great. So you can't ask, right?
Right.
So it really has to be up to the student to disclose, right? And many of them will once they're comfortable, right? With whomever they're working with. But yeah, so you
Sometimes
don't.
sometimes their parent is with them and they disclose for them.
True. Right. Right. So basically how it works is through the K through 12 system, that's a different law, right? Once they enter college, right, we follow other laws, right? The ADA. Tammy, what are the other ones we follow?
OCR. OCR.
Yes, OCR, right? So so as a result, you know, we cannot force a college student to disclose. We cannot force a college student to utilize our services. Eventually, they make their way over to our office. Many of them will come right out of high school and meet with us. Others choose not to because they think that they don't need it anymore. And then they realize maybe after the second semester or the end of the first semester that they do. And so they start with our office. And if they prior to that, you know, many of them who haven't started with our office may end up, you know, going to other offices first, right? And you know, I guess legally, you know, that's sort of why I think having an awareness, right, is going to be helpful, right? So
one thing I suggest is, you know, to the admissions counselors advising financial aid, because we have all these points of entry that students are, you know, like Annie said, who are they seeing first? Who do they choose to go to first? If you notice something, and, you know, maybe it's nothing, but maybe you do notice, you know, that someone has not just autism, but is autistic, but any type of disability. You can always have your disability services office or student accessibility services office more than likely has some sort of a trifold pamphlet describing their services and what they can offer with all their contact information on it, or they have business cards or something. And you could have those on your desk with other things from maybe transfer or, you know, any of the other departments at the college. And then you can just say to them, you know, here are some things you might, you know, some different services here at the college that you might want to take advantage of. You might want to look through these things, or here, let me gather some for you. And you strategically gather the ones you think they might need, you know, and a lot of times then they'll come through that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
excellent question. Any other questions, comments?
Todd has posted in the chat a book, young adult novel that is award-winning, that he says it's a very good read on this topic. So you might want to check that out.
Yeah, it's an Own Voices author that it was really helped me get a much better insight of kind of what it is to be inside of a person's thought process and how they actually perceive the world around them. But I also wanted to add something that I'm at Holyoke Community College, and we have a very strong and present neurodivergent club for our student body. And one of the things that I think that has helped is for our office staff to attend some of their meetings, so our faces become familiar. So we're kind of we're a part of the group as opposed to being just an empty face that, you know, they're approaching from time to time. And I've had a lot of students who, you know, come in and ask for me specifically because I've worked with them, and you know, I think some folks would find that a bit I don't know, I think problematic, you know, interruptions and all this, so, you know, we're busy all day long, right? But I think that having built those relationships, and as they sort of cross over from a community college standpoint, you know, you have some students who are moving on to 4 years, other students are going to their second year, they help introduce the new group members to us, you know, those types of things. So I think outside of building a really strong relationship with the Office of Disability Services, your campuses, if you do have a student neurodivergent group, being involved with them in some way, shape, or form, and not as a presenter, but just literally just asking if you could attend their meetings and just sort of sit there and get to know people is a really great way to involve yourself and learn from the individuals themselves. And it helps, at least for me, it definitely helps me to not prejudge or put myself on them, and allows me to be empathetic to what their needs are and be in that space. And I think like all the things we talked about, especially the financial aid with verification documents and academic progress documents, and all those things, the communication process is a lot easier because you have that relationship built and the nuances are there, as opposed to just that immediate kind of, there's no icebreaker when you're straight, the stranger danger kicks in, and it's like all those things happen. So so that's just one thing I wanted to add as a recommendation, but also please read that book because it's so good. So if you're readers, so thank you.
Great, thanks, Todd.
I just want to piggyback off of that to a certain extent, is that I also feel, based off of my time at different institutions, is that oftentimes students with any disability, I feel like other offices just kind of say, well, the Disability Resource Center or Student Accessibility Services, like they'll take care of them and make sure that they have whatever it is that they need, as opposed to, us trying to be more empathetic and understanding to, help facilitate, to see what we can do to, make those accommodations and assist them in the best way possible, not pushing it off to someone as their job, since they may be considered specialists in that area, but doing the work yourself to make sure you're educated to the standpoint where you can best assist that student as well, and not have to send them off somewhere else, because too many times students can get lost in the shuffle. And I think it's key to, and make sure that you're prepared to prevent that shuffle.
Right.
Absolutely. It's kind of like we talk about universal design for faculty, where their teaching methods are for all students, so that technically, if their class was pure universal design, we wouldn't need accommodations. So on the other side, those of us in offices on the administrative side or the staff side, this is our take on that, is providing explanation and kind of, just cueing into our students, just leaning in a little bit closer to see what do they need and how can I be that connection? How can I help in the way that they need, rather than passing them off,
Exactly. Yeah. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? All right. Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thanks for inviting us.
Exactly. If any of you have people in your disability services office or student accessibility services office who would want to connect with Annie and I, and maybe a number of us could present together at the conference, because I know you all have those departments at your colleges too, and sometimes it's kind of fun for us to meet new people who are doing the same thing that we're doing and get that connection and do something together,
Thank you so much, Tammy and Ann, and thank
you.
everyone for attending. We will send out the presentation. I'll ask if we can, is it okay if we send out the slides too? Are you comfortable with that? Okay. So we'll also send that out to everyone as well, and we'll send out a survey to review this presentation as well. Naturally, if you want to join the Access, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee, please feel free to reach out to me directly after this, and we'll be happy to have you as well.